Hi, thank you for coming. We are going to start our presentation today. It is on composting. This will be a series of composting videos. This is just kind of the starter one to set the mood a little bit here. Lots of information. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, but welcome, welcome. Composting, it is the process of maintaining decomposing materials to reuse for nutrient supplementation in soil and gardening systems. So it is, you can see decomposing, compost, composing, decomposing materials is kind of what compost is. It's got that added microbial growth that boosts the nutrient count in the soil that we have. So it is a good tool, a good resource to have. Uh, Best practices would involve closed loop systems that need very little human manipulation and management to promote natural biomimicry in our waste ecosystem. So that means closed loop systems are ones that kind of take care of themselves. So if they meaning that it doesn't really leave extras lying around, kind of are relying on other systems, other things to take care of it. Um, so that would mean that if we essentially we would be building this into our um, our normative day-to-day practices, which right now a lot of people don't compost. Right now I'm not composting myself. I have dabbled in it and I have failed at it. Um, but and that's something that will be the steps of another presentation, my actual experience with it myself. But this is just the basic presentation. It's essentially giving the resources and then taking care of the resources, putting them to optimum use, optimum efficiency. That's kind of what closed loop means, with as little human manipulation, as little effort as possible, because the less effort we have to put in, the more sustainable it will be longitudinally. And so the very little human manipulation and management to promote natural biomimicry in our waste ecosystem. Biomimicry is kind of, in this regard, it's a larger systemic biomimicry. So that would mean looking at the earth as a whole and seeing what would have been done, in the natural environment, in the natural biosphere, the natural ecosystems sectors of waste management, with animals, with humans. It's been argued that humans use more resources than our allotment, and we're much more high maintenance. And because we have more of a conscientiousness, and we tend to overconsume versus maintaining a balance in the system. And so because we overuse, we might use too many resources, and so that would be, I mean, that happens in the natural environment as well. If we have like, you know, um, um, plants that aren't normally native to an area that get introduced, but what animals brought them into the new area. A lot of that is kind of more human induced. If an animal has to go around like a highway or a freeway, or if there's skyscrapers now that they have to go around, a lot of it might, a lot of that might be because of these overt differences that a lot of times might be human rot versus um like natural disasters could do something comparable if there were tornadoes, or if a tornado takes out a lot of trees, animals won't be able to go through those trees as a safe corridor, to wherever they're going, because there aren't any trees anymore, which means there's not as much cover, so they're more prone to the predators that might be lurking, or what have you. And so on the larger scale waste ecosystem, animals in a natural environment, eat what they need, and then they poop it out and kind of leave it. And so they don't really manage that. Some animals, if they're in a more confined environment, will have like a poop corner, being a little crass, just poop, talking poop. But they don't need a lot of other resources. Beavers will use trees to build lodges, and they use mud and things like that. So they have more of a housing structure. You have like dens, and a lot of that does not go to waste, because they'll grab what they need, and that's kind of it. And um, so figuring out best practices for humans, because we are prone to consumption, to using things in our ecosystem, and figuring out, how to dispose of those things. That is a big question. And so, um, having something that's efficient and organic, um, that takes as little effort as possible, would probably be biomimicry, in the grand scheme of things. That would be something that you could argue, of course, but that's that's one slide on this. So let's just keep going through. Um, Reducing waste is still the best choice. Managing those things, is definitely worth doing, but having less, using less, that may be prone to being waste, excess, is still best practices. Of course, we are still allowed to play and explore and grow and learn using our resources, and we don't want to not allow that. And so and with our human systems as well, using our resources and being able to use resources is not a bad thing as well. But using them efficiently and for those. Best practices, and promoting the education and equality and ethical practices. Those are all important in resource allocation. That's not this presentation. This is just on composting. Having personal reuse and recycling systems can further decrease waste accrued, but best practices will generally always involve an overarching societal system for waste management. So if you can figure out composting for yourself, if that, like the foodstuffs that go into the garbage, can be put to more personal use than some of the garbage that ends up as garbage. And so it would just um, reduce the amount of garbage that goes into the societal system for waste management. So less garbage there is more time and more space to accrue waste that can't be allocated to use and allocated to use elsewhere. And so if you can use your, your compostable materials, then they won't have to manage it. It won't take up as much space for the communal space. And so it's just best practices if you can use it yourself, make use of it yourself, and decrease that amount of excess that will be put elsewhere. But there will always be a societal, like an overarching structure, um, in our presumed um, civilized world. It's part of governance and societal systems and balances, checks and balances. You're gonna buy stuff, you're gonna use stuff, you're gonna, make stuff. You're gonna need somewhere to throw it away. It's just instinctual, and since that is on a societal level, since it is bigger than just 1 to 2 people, it's generally going to be managed by a larger political system. And so it generally there will always be something there, even if it's not government. Obviously, some of our garbage management facilities are not, federal. They're not it's like a governmental program per se. And so, but they are they cover certain areas and they kind of can allocate vehicles as needed because then you have to look at monopolies and things like that. But, wanting to just make sure that everyone is taken care of in this regard, and you can kind of choose which societal systems fit best for your area for that waste management. Community programs can also mitigate waste by managing resource streams in such a way that resources are redistributed near end of life for the optimum chance of use before items become waste. That might mean community programs, nonprofit organizations. There are organizations like through farmers, etc., that try and make use of the ugly fruits and veggies that might not sell on the shelves but are totally good, so you can get them for a discounted price. If there's like the ugly wood from like the lumber yard, if it's not sellable, they might allocate it to more like nonprofity initiatives, or they with that stuff too, some of that can be like burned for energy and things like that. Um, but even energy programs, energy system, if we do have that already allotted, that means um, less needed in other sectors, and so that's going to make efficiency there, and so there might be more wiggle room for other energy resources and things like that. So it all kind of works together. And if we coordinate and cooperate and versus like competing. But there's something called cooperative competition. And that's another presentation, of course, again. Um, but there are systems in place. If like old unused notebooks. The notebooks can serve as like brown materials in composting. You can reuse those, repurpose those, get them to underprivileged kids, things like that. Or like donate them to like an arts program, old books from the library, antiquated, a lot of them can be shuffled between shelves, shuffled between shelves, shuffled between shelves, but they can also get donated to arts programs, or they can be repurposed too. So, but there are generally community programs in place. You might see like recycle, reuse, repurpose donation boxes around your community for like clothing stuffs. For again, probably underprivileged children, underprivileged individuals. They've got stores like Goodwill or Savers that allow for discounted clothing and things like that. It's all throughout our systems to make use of those articles. And so finding those for good societal initiatives, that is good too. I don't know of any I mean, there are community gardens, but I don't know if I've seen community compost sites per se, aside from through county programs. A lot of times, compost and other waste products will be divided based on where they're coming from, and the correlations also, um, like larger garbage dump materials can also be um, like paired with other, waste products. I went to an establishment that collected old furniture and things like that, as well as the food organics. But they did have, in that particular environment, the food organic composting stuffs were separate from the natural environmental. So I couldn't bring my yard waste to the place that had the food organics. It was a different establishment. And so that's something to bear in mind. Definitely look it up online, but I think that's a future slide. So I'm going to hold on to that conversation. But they are generally divided by the waste stream. Food organics, some places like co-ops might have a program where you can bring your food organics for composting. We had one of those up where I lived in Duluth, Minnesota. Household garbage, that will have a different establishment. A microbiota, microbiotic. I actually put a question mark by that one just because I was trying to think of different waste streams that are involved in composting. I know that you can buy microbiota for which are it's the bacteria, it's those small microbes that are used for like probiotics, or prebiotics. They're kind of for health, beverages, especially, you'll see those in there, but they are for sale, especially in that sphere, as well as in like beer making, alcohol making in general. You can find microbiota, um, that sort of thing, strands, streams of those. Also, with kombucha, if you want to make kombucha, they do suggest that you purchase something called a SCOBY, which has the bacteria. So you can purchase these microbiota specifically um, for best practices for creating these specific things. But I don't know, this might be like a wish cycling thing. I just put it down because I thought it was interesting, because with composting, there is a certain level of microbacterial activity, obviously, in the composting process. Those do come into play. And so but I've not actually heard much um, about donating those things. I just thought it was interesting. It also comes into play with like silage for agricultural animals, having food crops that sit in the silo, and so that microbiotic. Microbial element is actually a thing in society, and you can purchase those strands, those things, um, and you can create with those. So I don't know if how much of a recycling program there might be, just because it's not widespread necessarily at this time, but it is still something to think about. Cheese, anything that has to ferment, or mold, or all those things are kind of microbiotic in nature. So anyway, I just put that down because I was thinking about it, and the composting process, and I thought that was interesting. So that's something that we could touch on later. But anyway, natural environmental, you'll generally see like a yard waste facility versus, the food organic recycling programs. And some places don't do the food organics just because it's easy to get stuffs that are not necessarily like organic foods, or it's very easy with those things to have items mixed in that aren't actually compostable, XYZ. And so and too much moisture versus the bad bacteria. You'll hear the bad bacteria, if it starts to mold, then it's not going to be the good bacteria that you need for good compost. So having too much moisture, it could go wrong very easily. And so the food organics might not make the cut sometimes, but many counties have different facilities for different waste products, which we just kind of established. Yard scraps will often be collected in different space than food scraps. Electronics and biohazards are also collected, as well as large pieces of furniture and construction waste. Well, these are not composted, but rather are recycled or disposed of properly. Mine a pass are paying per items brought in, might be, the norm for waste facilities. They may also request a proof of residency in that county, just so that way they are ensuring that they are taking care of their own residents. They are the priority. I know that's not necessarily, again, food scraps you won't always see all the time, and it might be more organizational. It might be just like a garbage can outside of a co-op, and so the structure on those facilities might be here and there a bit. But the larger waste facilities for like yard waste, um, they might request monies to register for the program in order for, you know, like primo access, if you want the like one visit or as a seasonal pass, so you can just come and go as you please to drop off trees, or it depends on what projects you have going, how big your yard is, things like that. But there might be different programs that you can look into depending on where you are. Um, and so that's something that you can look into. But because that is kind of on a more governmental, societal level, they might say, we cater to our county. We can get you to your county office, your county facility. So that way they're taking care of that stuff. And that might stop like contaminants or like invasive species from spreading too, if you bring your wood stuffs or, that woody material to the location in your county. It was probably in that county to start with, and so it won't spread to others if it gets, composted elsewhere. And then this was just um, a slider slide. It's just a kind of a filler. You can talk about local community program basics in your area. This is kind of a public forum, and so I'm not going to go into details about my specific location. Um, but it's just an easy browser search away. If you want to ask the internet, it can tell you where you can compost your materials, where to bring it, so that way it can be put to use or not. Are there any questions?